question is, Namibia, is it an oil province? And I think Walter will come as close as he can to answering that question tonight. I've known Walter a long time, at least 30 years. He's president and chief geologist, and he does seismic sequence stratigraphy for MICRO-STRAT, starting in 1983 through 2008. He's obtained, managed, and completed more than 1,500 projects in 42 countries with 100 plus companies. He's dealt with a lot of people as a consultant. Most of these projects are integrated high resolution biostratigraphic analysis from the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and even the Cenozoic. From 88 to 2008, he worked with Peter Vale and pioneered the concept and methodologies of seismic sequence stratigraphic analysis and the integration of high resolution biostratigraphy, well log signatures, and 2 to 3D seismic. Okay, take it away, Walter. It's all yours.
And as Walter is getting ready to share his video and his screen, I just thought I would let everyone know to please submit questions in the chat throughout the talk. And at the end of the talk, I will facilitate the Q&A with Walter, and that should be a lot of fun.
Hey, my talk tonight poses a question. Question is Namibia really an oil province? In Namibia, we have 4 basins in the offshore. We have the Namib Basin, that's the video.
You're all set, Walter. We can see you on video.
Okay, I'm trying to get this other. Okay, let's go back here. My talk poses a question. The question is, Namibia really an oil province? Namibia has 4 basins in the offshore. The Namib Basin, the Walvis Basin, the Wornardt Basin, and this is the Orange Basin. There's quite a few companies in Namibia. This is a list on the right here. And these are the blocks that they are exploring in. They're even exploring, other people are even exploring in the onshore now. Namibia, long neglected as an oil province, seems to be the perfect place for large oil discoveries. Many wells have source rocks, trapped, maybe, potential reservoir facies. All this is a key to success in a successful oil discovery. After drilling 13 wells in Namibia, no commercial quantities of oil has been found in Namibia. However, commercial quantities of oil have not been found, but gas has been found in the Chevron Kudu field in the Orange Basin in Southern California. The Wingat and Marumba and Moosehead are HRT wells, and we analyzed those wells for high resolution biostratigraphy, geochemistry, data, and paleo water depth, and age datable maximum flooding surfaces tied to the cycle chart. This slide shows some of the wells that have been drilled before. The Kunin well, which is a Russian well. Here's a taper well. Here's the Wingat, and this is the Marumba well. And then we have the Moosehead down here in Orange Basin. This is the location of the same 3 wells, and just to eye that there are seismic, an awful lot of seismic has been shot now, mostly 2D, but there are some 3D. Methodology we use is high resolution biostratigraphy, identify and age date the microfossils, identify and age date maximum flooding surfaces. We plot the maximum flooding surface on a well log and then plot it on the seismic, and that allows us to make accurate correlations in wells using the maximum flooding surface. The fossils that we use, one of them is the calcareous nanofossils. These are calcareous microfossils, very, very small, but very, very accurate age indicators. We start out in a well, we examine the well every 30 feet. We record all of the fossils in the well, and we look at these are the abundance of the fossils in the first occurrence downhole, and the more abundant they are, the wider the bars are. And then we select certain fossils as marker species that we can correlate around the basin. Now we do the same thing with a group of microfossils called foraminifera. And we have these foraminifera we found in the well, and these are the abundances, and these are the marker species. And we are able to identify and interpret paleo water depth from the fossils. So this is shallow water. It gets deepening, deeper as you go up the hole. These are the planktonic fossils that we look for. And these are the benthic forams that we identify. Now the benthic forams can tell what zone they're in, what the paleo water depth zone we're in. Like on this chart, here's we can say interneritic, middle neritic, outer neritic, upper bathyal, middle bathyal, lower bathyal. So this is the shelf slope break. So usually the fans occur down here. We make a summary chart with the depth, and then we have the marker species, and we put an age on each one of these marker species. And if we have the formation, we do that. We put the formation in, and then this is the stage age, and then we go from different interpretations of the paleo environment. In this slide shows the one of our checklists, and shows the abundances. The darker they are, the more abundant they are. And we selected this as a peak abundance. So we're looking for the maximum flooding surface. This is what we picked as the maximum flooding surface in this particular interval. And this is another one, and another one down here. Within the maximum flooding surface is within what we call a maximum flooding surface condensed section. And that, you can tell that with all these abundant fossils in here, and the same thing in here. So these intervals are maximum flooding surface condensed sections. That is represented here on this diagram. The abundance and diversity fossil histograms recognize maximum flooding surface condensed sections and maximum flooding surfaces. So this is the maximum flooding surface here from this dashed line up to this dashed line. And this dashed line is what we call the maximum flooding surface. Now, the condensed section is a thin chronostratigraphic interval of hemipelagic and pelagic marine sediments, deposited in extremely slow rates during sediment starvation on the inner-outer shelf, the slope, the abyssal plain, through a period of maximum relative sea level rise and the maximum transgression of the shoreline. It is characterized by orthogenic minerals and maximum abundance and diversity peaks of planktonic fossils. The maximum flooding surface within this maximum flooding surface condensed section provides a chronostratigraphic time correlation between the shelf and the slope sediments. Additional minor condensed sections are also present in the third order depositional sequence as shown below. So this is what we call the transgressive systems tract. This is the maximum flooding surface condensed section, and the dashed line is the maximum flooding surface, and that's represented here. We can identify these maximum flooding surfaces on our global cycle chart. So the maximum flooding surfaces are designated here by this dashed line at the apex of this triangle. So we assign this an age of 87.88. This is the Turonian 1, we call it. Here's another one we call Turonian 3, Turonian 2, Turonian 1. So we can recognize these in wells. And it's very important because we can correlate those and identify those not only in logs, but on seismic. We make from the well, we identify a series of maximum flooding surface in the well on this chart. Here's the depth, here's the maximum flooding surface age, numerical age, and then the stage age. And we can also identify major stages and again the water depth. We can also find the same maximum flooding surface as we found in the well. We can correlate those to the seismic, and we can date those on the seismic. So whether you're crossing faults or unconformities, you can always identify these maximum flooding surfaces as you go laterally on a seismic line. So in summary, we get the fossils, identify them, get the abundance, recognize the maximum flooding surfaces, and then we can identify those maximum flooding surfaces on a log. And then we can correlate that down into the maximum flooding surface on the global cycle chart. And if we find some that are missing, we can then determine how much time is missing between these maximum flooding surfaces. Rather than just correlating E-logs, we identified global Galloway type sequences and their age-dated maximum flooding surfaces to correlate stratigraphic sections in the Walvis, Lederich, and Orange Basins. This new tool, the maximum flooding surface, is associated with the transgressive system tract, rising relative sea level, high TOC, organic richness, major seals, fossil abundance, high gamma, and low resistivity. This is a very important aspect of drilling wells. I'm going to read that again. This new tool, the maximum flooding surface associated with the transgressive system tract, rising relative sea level, high TOC, increase in organic richness, major seals, fossil abundance, high gamma, and low resistivity. And this is a slug diagram from Dr. Vail. There's a low stand system tract, and then we have transgressive and high stand system tract and the maximum flooding surface. 16 age datable chronostratigraphic maximum flooding surfaces and 15 sequences were recognized in each of the 3 wells to provide accurate time correlations in Namibia. Maximum flooding surfaces and their condensed sections and well-developed minor maximum flooding surfaces and their condensed sections may act as seals in more slope fans, channel sands. The age-dated maximum flooding surfaces and slope fan condensed sections provide clues to locate, trace, and correlate source rocks and major seals in wells in Namibia. And again, this is the maximum flooding surface condensed section and the maximum flooding surface. This methodology provides a consistent and reliable correlation of stratigraphic and chronostratigraphic intervals between two age-datable maximum flooding surfaces. This is a seismic section through a well, and you can see here's the maximum flooding surface in this particular well, another maximum flooding surface here, and that's a slope fan, and this is a channel sand and the maximum flooding surface. So we have a basin floor fan and a channel sand here between two maximum flooding surfaces that can be identified as we move away from the well. This is a stratigraphic chart. It's from the Eagle Ford, but it's essentially the same section as we have in Namibia. Namibia is the oldest ones we found is Permian. So we have the Permian, we have the lower Aptian, and then we have the lower middle upper Albion, the Cenomanian, Turonian, Coniacian, and finally the Santonian. The first well we're going to talk about is the wind gap. This is the location of the wind gap. Here's the Marumba. HRT drilled these wells, the wind gap well, to 5,000 meters, 16,404 feet. They first wanted to test the Albion carbonate platform rocks, but that didn't work. Carbonates were not very well developed, poor porosity. So they decided to test deeper secondary prospect, and that was the turbidite channel sands. This is a seismic section, and this is the wind gap here, and this is the top of the Cretaceous. Here's the top of the Albion, and these are the carbonates that they were after. And these are the Aptian, these are the Aptian source rocks. The wind gap drilled into the Permian at the TD at 5,000 meters. They were going to test the turbidite channel sands and sample the Aptian restricted marine source rocks. And what they found was some live oil was recovered at about 4,674 meters, but it was not in commercial quantities. So this is the wind gap, and if you look very closely, there's a little green circle here, and that's the interval that they found the oil in. And these are the Aptian coarse rock or source rocks just below it. So what they're looking for were these channel sands in a slope fan setting. In the wind gap, there are 4 oil samples were analyzed. It yields light oil, 38 to 40 degree API gravity, minimum contamination, no water-bearing zones in the drilled section, and the H2S was 0. The wind gap, we identified 2 well-developed Aptian Permian restricted marine source rocks, rich in organic carbon within the oil generating window, plus several thin-bedded sandy reservoir facies saturated by oil within the Aptian section. The units that we recognized in the section with the oil and the source rocks, as we're going to go deeper. So the first time we find in the Albion, we find marine rocks and marine sands. and then shallowing marine calcareous shales, and then shallow sands to restricted marine shales. As we go down the hole, we find the OAE number A1A. This is a major anoxic event, early at Aptian, about 122 million, 3 million years. Widespread organic matter, thin sandy beds, light oil in the early Aptian. And then as we keep going down in the well, we find the Aptian to late Permian, lacustrine, peralic to fluidal sediments with major mature shales as source rocks in the oil window. The established existence of mature source rocks in the oil window, generating light oil of 38 to 42 gravity, and the recovery of the same light oil in sandstones and mature shales confirms the source potential of the Walvis Basin. Spectrum did a study in the basin, in the Walvis Basin, and they determined that the river, the major river that flows into in the Walvis Basin, is called the Yuga River. Transported large amounts of sediment, including clean quartz-rich sand, into the Walvis Basin and formed offshore fans since the Cretaceous. This is their diagram showing the late Cretaceous turbidite channel play in the deep water in the Walvis Basin, and this is probably the Yuga River, the tributaries and the fans that's probably being developed. They also mapped two main depot centers for Aptian source rocks. It was divided by a northwest-southeast trending outer high basement ridge. One of the basin had the Wingat and the Marumba Basin in the basin, and there was one to the north. The Marumba well is 15 kilometers, 9 miles west of the Wingat. That's the second well that they drilled. They drilled it to 5,729 meters. And the first thing they were going to do, they're going to test a Barremian age basin floor fan, but the reservoir sand that they thought was there was actually igneous facies with very low porosity. No oil, but they drilled through Aptian source rocks in the oil window. And this is the Marumba. Come down to the top of the Cretaceous. These are the Santonian sands that they were, the fan sands that seem to be pretty well developed here in Namibia. And this is top of the Albion. And then these are the carbonates. And these are the source rocks. Maybe when they're looking for that basin floor fan, they were looking for something like this with a whole bunch of clean sands in it, basin floor with max flooding surfaces below the basin floor fan and the slope fan above. And, you know, that's how you can tell whether it's a channel sand or a basin floor fan. If you have a maximum flooding surface directly below the basin floor fan, it's a basin floor fan. If there's no maximum flooding surface below that sand, it's probably in a slope fan. The Marumba well, number one, was the secondary target, was the Santonian sands. They were found 794 feet of it, of gross section, and 118 feet of net sand with 19% porosity, but it was wet. And they interpreted the sands as being a confined lower slope, meandering channel system. Maybe something like this. So what we're looking for here, these channel sands in the system, and this would be a basin floor fan, and this would be the channel that they're looking for in a channel system. And maybe on seismic, they may have seen something that looked like this. Now the Moosehead is another well they drilled much further south in the Orange Basin. And their target was the beryllium carbonate reservoirs in a four-way dip closure with equivalent age reservoirs as in Brazil, the pre-salt reservoirs. They penetrated 100 meters of carbonates with fair porosity, but no oil was discovered. And this is the Moosehead on the seismic. And again, here's the top of the Cretaceous and top of the Albion. And these are carbonates in the source rock. And the Moosehead went all the way down into the carbonates of the beryllium, which is shown on this slide. So here's another slide with the Moosehead, and it moves all the way down to below the into the beryllium carbonate section down here. The Moosehead TD'd at 170 meters. No oil was recovered. They went through and found Aptian source rocks in the oil window. Thin-bedded sandy reservoir facies were also present. In the wind gap, Marumba and Moosehead, the stratigraphic position of potential sandy reservoir facies, detailed age and organic rich source rocks are present in these wells, plus live oil in the wind gap number 1. This confirms the source potential and the presence of a petroleum system in the Walvis Basin. Additional wells we had worked in Namibia using the maximum flooding surfaces to age date the fossils, age date the wells. And we worked the wells called the North Hydro. This was in the Walvis, another North Hydro well, National Petroleum Corporation well, and the Ranger Oil of Namibia Limited, also in the Walvis Basin. We also analyzed wells in the Lüderitz Basin, the Shell well, the North Hydro well, and in the Orange Basin, we analyzed the Chevron well, deep well. We had the original hole, and we also identified and analyzed the sidetrack. The next well that we are going to talk about are wells that have been drilled more recently. One is called the Prospect S in the Walvis Basin by Cheria. This well is located on the southern margin of the late Cretaceous fan play in Pelt 37. Significant element of a four-way dip closure was identified, and anticipated stacked reservoirs were penetrated. This is the Prospect S of Chariot. And you can see it goes all the way down into the Albion and Aptian source rocks. The potential was 460 million barrels. It was drilled to TD at 4165 meters, well with wet gas shows, and a TD in Apton source box. This is the seismic section through the S well, and this is the Santonian sands, and this is the source rock section down here. Again, they're probably looking for these big channels here in the Santonian. Next well is the Cormorant, another well drilled by Shariat. And this is the Cormorant in relation to southeast of the Prospect S well. And this well was also drilled by Chariot, and it was drilled to 3,855 meters. And it drilled down to the mid-Cretaceous. It proved that the fan clay existed, and the presence of a mature source sequence was present, but with water-bearing wet sand signatures. It encountered 50 meters of gross section consisting of interbedded shales and claystone. Show you this because might be something where they have this would be a slope fan. This would be a channel that they might be looking for in the slope fan in the Santonian channel sands. Recent quotes about Namibia say major oil companies believe Namibia is the Africa's next oil hotspot. Another quote, Namibia may hold as much oil as the pre-salt fields offshore Brazil, which holds 16 billion barrels of crude reserve. Another statement by Echo Atlantic Oil and Gas estimates that there is 21.5 billion barrels of prospective oil in its 4 blocks. And remember, only 13 wells have been drilled in Namibia offshore. Other companies that have blocks in Africa that are potentially going to be drilled. One is the Reconnaissance Energy Africa, Exxon Mobil Corporation, Royal Dutch Shell, Chevron, BP. This is a little diagram showing here's the Cormorant here in L37. And then this is the new Exxon block. And this is another new Exxon block here in the offshore Namibia. So the established existence of mature source rock in the oil window, generating light oil of 38 to 42 gravity, and recovery of the same light oil in sandstones and mature shales confirms the source potential of the Walvis Basin. Finding commercial quantities of oil associated with high quality source rocks in the Walvis Basin is much greater now than it was before the WinGAT was completed. Thank you much for your attention. And the question is Namibia really an oil province? Thank you.